Welcome to the Power Rankings. We're all going to agree this week. We're all going to agree. We're all going to get along. Everybody's going to be happy. The comment section will be replete with people who say, "What a good job. We are so proud to see what you've done with the Power Rankings. We're in your debt." That kidding aside, at 31, after tonight's shutout loss against Calgary, I was worried. I thought, if the Kings win this game tonight, they're going to make it difficult for me to decide who's 31st. Because let's be honest, there isn't really a team that's playing horrible right now, outside of a couple of teams near the bottom, and then to put them at the bottom, I don't know. We're a week out, though, and there's a couple teams that could very well be there that weren't expected to be there. Not like this. At 30, down 6 spots is Anaheim. I know they beat Calgary, but Anaheim is struggling. And beating Calgary doesn't mean that they're out of the struggling category. And there are a lot of Anaheim fans who'd like to see Randy Carlyle gone. I don't think it's going to happen. But it's been quite a ride down for Anaheim. Number 29, down 7 spots from last week. Chicago. 7 losses in a row will do that. As I said, there were a lot of teams playing very well. The league is very close. And the teams that are not playing well are really standing out. And these 3 teams stand out above all else. I understand the Kings are 3-3 in their last 6, but you look at their overall record. You look at with the Calgary game tonight where they're trending back down. So LA is looking up at everybody else, and they're digging themselves into a hole. It's going to be very difficult for them to dig their way out of. Number 28, down 3 spots from last week, Vegas. Vegas would have probably held 25th if they'd been able to hold on against Montreal. The loss against Montreal is troubling, and there's a lot of troubling signs with Vegas. And I understand they got Schmidt out, they got Howell out, and Stastny's still out. And when those guys come back, it should get better. But you look at Pacioretty, his 2 goals in 13 games. Tonight, for instance, he had 8 shots on net, and he just looked really, really frustrated by the end of it. And I see a lot of frustration with Vegas, and I don't look at their goaltending and say, okay, that's going to save them. I don't look at their defense or their offense. I'm looking for that. Like with Chicago, you could see Patrick Kane going on a run. You could see Crawford going on a run. Anaheim, you could definitely see them going on a run with the team that they have. LA, they kind of have to turn back the clock to do that, but Brown showed what happens when you have some energy. I just don't get that feeling with Vegas. Vegas is very close to being at the bottom of this thing. Number 27, staying put from last week. Detroit, they keep getting down. They come back, they win in overtime, they win in shootouts. Detroit has been fun to watch this year, and they're close to 500. They're close to digging their way out of this. And again, they find themselves ahead of 4 other teams. It's difficult to show that they've improved when they stay in the same spot as last week. But again, they technically passed these 3 teams this week. They just had 3 other teams that had pretty good weeks that passed ahead of them. Number 26, up 5 spots from last week, is Florida. What a difference a Luongo makes. It's what it comes down to. It's the Roberto Luongo effect. And I hate to say it because I've always been a fan of James Reimer. But with Luongo back, they look like the team that could threaten for the playoffs. It's a long shot, but at least they're in that conversation. And overtime losses help them remain in that conversation, of course. But they're on the right track. And they definitely had a good week. At number 25, moving up 3 spots from last week, is St. Louis. And they have a big game coming up tomorrow against Minnesota. St. Louis had dug their way out of this row until a team won a game tonight that bumped them out of this row and bumped St. Louis back down. So St. Louis was 24th coming into tonight, and they have looked better. They're now sitting above 500, which is wins and losses, right? 6 wins, 5 losses, 3 overtime losses, I believe. And there's hope that St. Louis can still get back to where they were supposed to be before the season started. Number 24, dropping 5 spots from last week, is Jersey. Wow. Speaking of what a difference a week or 2 will make, and how, I can't really talk about that many teams playing badly. New Jersey, though, is in there. And we could be looking at a New Jersey team next week as low as 28th or 29th if they can't pull their way out of this. They have a big game coming up tomorrow. We'll see how they do with that one. Every game is a big game when you're last in your division, and that's where Jersey is right now. And I would not have expected that before the season started. I thought they would actually make improvements. Then they get off to that 4-0 start. It's like, okay, they're going to improve. Apparently it's going to be a little bit delayed. Number 23, up 6 spots from last week, is the New York Rangers. And 6 spots is as much as anybody went up this week. The highest drops, there were 3 teams that dropped by 7. There were 3 teams that went up by 6. And the Rangers are one of the ones that went up by 6. Really solid week for the Rangers. They're showing a lot of fight. Zibanejad is emerging as a pretty damn solid leader for this team. Lundqvist is showing that he is very much wanting to get back to the playoffs, and he'll talk all day about rebuilds, and he's okay with being on a rebuild with New York. But if they have a shot at taking a run at the playoffs, I guarantee you Lundqvist at this stage in his career wants that. Number 22, down 2 spots from last week. Carolina's frustrating. I've talked about this in preview and review videos. They're week to week now. It's a very frustrating thing to watch. They outshoot everybody. And at the start of the year, it was fun. Now it's frustrating. They lost in a shootout tonight to Detroit, even though they outshot them by 20 shots. Carolina won a game this week against these guys, and they got outshot in that game. So I thought, well, maybe they're starting to learn. And then, no. Carolina's a team to watch because they have a new coach, they have a new GM, so that's not where the movement's going to be. The other thing is, they already switched out a lot of players. A lot of players got traded, so what does Carolina do if they miss the playoffs this year? Do we see guys spend 1 year in Carolina and get traded? Do we see at the deadline Don Waddell trading off guys that he picked up last summer? It is Don Waddell. And I talked about this when they hired Don Waddell as GM. The only mitigating factor with that is Tom Dundon's with the guy that seems to have the final say. I don't think it's Don Waddell that has the final say. I think Waddell's just there and in name only as the general manager. I think Dundon's the one pulling the strings. At number 21, moving up 5 spots from last week, the very baffling and befuddling and bewildering Ottawa Senators. Are the Senators a team ready to make a run at the playoffs? You don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows. I don't think the Senators know. But tonight's win in Tampa was huge. Absolutely huge. They were down 4-2 going into the third, and they won the game 6-4. There's a lot of fight in this team. Matt Duchene is playing the best hockey he has in years. He's fighting his way through a lot of negative comments, and I get the negative comments. I really do. But they've got 2 wins in 3 games since the Uber incident. And Shabbat looks like the real star on the blue line that they had with Carlson, who's now gone to San Jose, and San Jose's not reaping a lot of rewards from that deal yet, whereas Ottawa is. Chris Tierney's been fantastic, and that's definitely worthy of note for them. At 20, down 3 spots from last week. So I took a lot of flack last week for the Islanders being in 17th, even though they were first in their division. And, you know, I looked at that and I looked at where they were in the standings and I was like, well, I go with this board every night and I trust the board, and the board tells me they're not playing that well. Then the Hockey News puts out an article saying that even though they're first place, the underlying numbers don't seem to support it. Now they've lost 3 in a row and they're down to 20th on the board. Keep in mind, they only lost 3 spots in those 3 losses. So when you look at where a team is on the board, it's not just about how they did, it's about how everybody else around them is doing. So if everybody else around them is winning, they're not going to go up by much. If everybody else around them is losing, they could go up by a ton. For the Islanders, they're down here for this week. They're not in first place in their division now, and I still think it's dicey for them to make the playoffs. I do. I think that loss tonight against Florida was big. It was big for both teams, because they could be fighting it out for a wild card spot down the stretch. Number 19, down 7 spots from last week, Arizona. Well, Arizona went out on the road, and they fought the good fight against Philly, but in the end they lost that one. They didn't look fantastic in that, and now tonight they go in against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh beat them in the second period. 3 goals in the second by Pittsburgh. And so for Arizona, they had a rough week. A rough week for the Coyotes. They're still in the top. They're not in this row right now. They're still up here. But there's a sense that, it's a fragile team. It's a young team. And this is where the whole learning how to win thing is actually a thing. You're going to have these streaks where things aren't working well for you. You need to work through it and get back to the winning. And it's the attitude you have going through these losing periods that determine whether or not you're going to get through it or if it's just going to turn into another lost season. Number 18, moving up 3 spots from last week, Philly. The Flyers are not dead. And for fans of the Flyers, as I said in my review video this afternoon, if you're looking for Hackstall to get fired, he's been reprieved by at least 3 weeks. I would say that the play of the team and, more importantly, by Brian Elliott, has given him at least 3 more weeks as coach. Elliott's giving them the coaching or the goaltending they need, and so the coach is a little bit safer than he otherwise was. And Philly looks good right now. Absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the Metro. Because look, Metro. Keeping in line with that theme, 17th spot, moving up 4 spots from last week, Columbus, the first place team in the Metro, who lost tonight against the Rangers in a shootout. And that's right after they beat the Capitals 2-1. So this row is dominated, absolutely dominated by the Metro Division, and Columbus is playing better. They're definitely playing better. I think they have the makings of a good, solid team. I think it's going to depend on Bobrovsky continuing with his upswing. Let's be honest, big part of the reason they were inconsistent, Bobrovsky in net wasn't Bobrovsky. So that definitely hurt them. Number 16, moving up 2 spots from last week, is Dallas. I didn't penalize them for the loss to Nashville. It hurt, but Dallas is dealing with a lot of injuries. I thought that coming out with a point against Nashville was good enough that I left them in the same spot they were coming into today. It's been an interesting week for Dallas. I think that they're showing they might be a playoff team. I don't know. It's getting really tough to tell because there are so many teams that are all bunched in together. So for Dallas, we'll see where they go next and what happens next. But their home record is solid. Their road record is 1 game below 500. They're still that middling team. Just very, very, I don't know. Number 15, down 8 spots from last week. Pittsburgh. Tonight, they stopped a losing streak. If they had lost to Arizona tonight, we would have seen them down probably 18th. Maybe even 19th, because Arizona would have been higher up. But as it stands, they drop for the weekly standings to 18, but they actually moved up from where they were coming into today. Jim Rutherford says he's open for business. Rumor has it there's all these teams calling him. Daniel Sprong's names got mentioned again tonight on Hockey Night in Canada. I don't know how much there is to it, but I will say this. Pittsburgh seems to be more concerned this year about the start they're having than last year. And Crosby is starting to show signs that he's ready to get back into being one of the top scorers in the league. He can turn it on. So he started out kind of slow, but he's starting to turn it on again. Who knows? By the end of the year, we may see him top 5 in scoring. It wouldn't surprise me. But for Pittsburgh, yeah, they dropped by 8. That's actually the biggest drop of the week, is Pittsburgh. It's a brutal drop. They can get right back into it for sure, but they had a really rough week. Number 14, moving up 2 spots from last week, Buffalo. Yes, the Sabres stay in the top 2 rows. I think this is 3 weeks in a row. And Buffalo, nice comeback win today against the Canucks. And they had a comeback victory over Montreal as well. You don't like to see a team need to come back like that, as eventually you'll run out of gas doing it. But, Buffalo's playing well, and right now they look like a playoff team. Everybody talks about Skinner and what Skinner's doing, and I get it. But I think one guy you really need to look at is Jack Eichel, because Eichel is finally playing like the player we had expected when he was drafted, and he's healthy. So that line is going. That line's fantastic. Skinner, what's happening with Skinner, I watched it, and again today it was this. He just stands exactly where he has to be for those goals. It reminds me of, and I've said this before, Anson Carter in Vancouver, the 1 year he had with the Sedins. Just stand right there and just get ready, and the puck, you'll be able to just bang it in. And that's what Skinner's doing. Skinner's getting set up for goals that he never got set up for in Carolina. And he's reaping the rewards. And remember, he's in a contract year. So the more goals he racks up like this, the more expensive he gets as a free agent in the offseason. And we'll see what happens with that. Number 13, down 7 spots from last week. I had a lot of people say last week the Oilers were too high. And the Oilers must have watched my power rankings last week and said, wow, we're way too high. We need to not be that high up. And so they proceeded to lose this week. And show they're not an upper echelon team. And, McDavid can only drag them so far. Their goaltending, I have concerns with. Their blue line, I think, is better than what people give it credit for. And their depth scoring, I don't know. They get a chance to play tomorrow, and we'll see if they end up moving up. But for this week, I've got them down in 13th. They crashed pretty fast this week. Number 12, down 4 spots from last week. If you were waiting for the Avalanche to fall, the Avalanche is rolling downhill right now. Number 12, and again, they were held up there. I thought they were playing well in their losses. I didn't see that against Winnipeg. I thought Winnipeg really kind of handed it to them. And it showed that Winnipeg is here and Colorado is not. So, that road record was a problem for Colorado last year. Maybe we're getting back to that again this year. Either way, Colorado now, their record has slipped. And they are going to need to turn it around quickly. Number 11, down 1 spot from last week. The frustrating San Jose Sharks. Goaltending numbers are down. Erik Karlsson is not producing. Maybe Melker Karlsson would be better on that point. Either way, this has been a rough start for San Jose, not what was expected. The Sharks were supposed to be a top team in the league. They were supposed to be contending, and they dropped this week. And I could see Pittsburgh, I could see Buffalo, Dallas, Columbus. I could see a lot of teams pushing for that spot over the next 7 days. So San Jose has a game tomorrow night at home against Calgary. We'll find out where they're at tomorrow night. Calgary's a good test, even though it's going to be Mike Smith. And if they come out and score 5 goals, people are going to say, it's Mike Smith. So it's kind of a they can't win kind of situation. Number 10, moving up 4 spots from last week. I like what I've seen from the Capitals. And I think they're in a better position than some of the other teams on the board. Yes, they lost against Columbus. That bumped them down from, I had them up as high as 8th at one point this week because of the fact there were teams that were dropping out of that top row. And there were some teams that were having some abysmal results. So the Capitals actually found themselves at one point this week in 8th. They're down in 10th right now, which is still 4 spots higher than they were the week before. I think Washington's getting closer to being the Stanley Cup champion, defending Stanley Cup champion team we expect. But again, there's so little to choose really between 10 and 20. It gets kind of muddy in there, and I just have to go by, okay, nightly. And then I look and I go, really? Number 9, moving up 6 spots from last week. Montreal. Yeah, so the Habs, another comeback win tonight against Vegas. They did lose when they had the lead against Buffalo the previous game. But Montreal's playing very well. What's holding Montreal back, if it's holding them back, though, is the fact that Carey Price has not been Carey Price. I like Antti Niemi's spirit, but Niemi is not a premier starting goaltender in the NHL. If Montreal could get Carey Price level goaltending out of Carey Price to go with the exciting forward group that they've got assembled and an underrated blue line, they can get up into the top 5, not just number 9. They may still get there anyways. They had a very good week, and yeah. So it was a bit of a sloppy win over Vegas, but they won it. And they managed to withstand any emotions of Max Pacioretty's return. Tatar got a goal, the game winner against his former team. It's all coming up in their favor right now. Number 8, moving up 3 spots from last week. Boston. Impressive win for them tonight over the Toronto Maple Leafs. I was very happy with that. I didn't like how they started the game. I, of course, was not happy with how they looked against Vancouver earlier in the week. but Vancouver's been this baffling item to watch. I'm not sure what we're seeing with Vancouver. I mean that. I'm not sure. You'll notice Vancouver's not on the board yet. But, Boston's played well. And they absolutely deserve to be at, I believe, where they are right now. But I have some concerns. And tomorrow, they're at home against Vegas. So that is a big test for them. It's a back-to-back. Now they have the weaker team coming in. Are they going to have a rough game against Vegas because they take them lightly? And the other problem with the Boston Bruins, of course, is they are a one-line team. It is one hell of a one line, but they are a one-line team. Number 7, moving up 6 spots from last week. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I know they blew the 3-1 lead in the third period against Buffalo. That prevented them from moving up to 6th. They got a point. They've got points in 6 straight games. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the league. I kind of feel like if their goaltending was marginally better, they would be legit first place. And it's funny that I would say that too, because they are first place in the Pacific right now. They are 1 point ahead of Calgary. And the Flames do have a game in hand, but they're still the leaders. And they're legit. They're 10-6-2. I don't know how they got there either. If anybody has any idea what's going on with Vancouver, why they're able to score at will in certain games, I'm not sure. I know Horvat's looked like a beast. Pettersson gets all the credit, but honestly, Virtanen's got 7 goals. Eriksson produced in the Buffalo and Boston games, so suddenly he's getting goals. I don't know. I don't know how far this can go, but it's really weird. Goodbranson's on a 5-game point streak. It's bizarro world. Number 6, moving up 3 spots from last week, Calgary. And I'm sure I'll get told they're too high on the board. Calgary had a very good week. They're 1 point back of Vancouver. As I said, with a game in hand, they're playing very well. The Flames look like the more legit team in Alberta right now. They are the more legit team in Alberta right now. Let's be honest. They went in against an LA team that, yes, they're 31st on the board, but they only gave them 21 shots. And no matter how well Campbell played, they didn't get frustrated. They didn't end up taking some dumb penalties, which can happen when a goaltender's stoning you like that. It can be hard not to get a roughing or cross-checking call or something because you're really pushing for that. So Calgary's played relatively well, and they are almost top 5. The top 5 doesn't change from last week much. Number 5, down 1 spot from last week, Toronto. At one point this week, I had Toronto in 3rd. Toronto is not 3rd now. They're down to 5th. Rough loss against Boston, which hurt them, but Toronto is still looking pretty excellent. They were dangerous. That first period, they did pepper Halak with 21 shots. They just couldn't solve Halak, and they solved him once in the second period, courtesy of John Tavares, but the Bruins got that win. Toronto will learn from that and move on. I have no doubt in my mind that Toronto is one of the better teams in the league. Number 4, moving up 1 spot from last week, the Wild. They're 10-4-2, and they're playing some excellent hockey. They had some lucky wins early on. Early on, they had some lucky wins, and it was hard for me, and I had them down in and around this region, down in that bottom 2 rows. But week after week after week, they keep pushing, and they keep going up. So their rating keeps going up, and for Minnesota, I don't know how far this goes. The biggest question mark with Minnesota is this. They have an older team, so as we get into December, January, February, how healthy are they going to be? How fresh are they going to be? We've seen over the last couple of seasons that down the stretch, Ryan Suter looks tired. Can Parise stay healthy for a full season? He's playing the best hockey he has in quite a while. These are the question marks you have if you're a Minnesota fan, and that I have personally that leaves me putting them at 4th. 3rd spot, not changing. Winnipeg. I didn't see anything in the game between them and Colorado to make me say, yeah, they should drop. And I didn't see anything in that game with Colorado that makes me say, yeah, they're top 2. I still have them in 3rd. We'll see if they stay there. They have a game tomorrow against New Jersey, which we'll see. Are they going to be rusty? Are they going to be well rested? There's 2 ways of looking at it, right? Winnipeg, though, solid contender, absolutely. Number 2, Tampa. I agonized over this. Ottawa beats them tonight. But they had won 4 in a row coming into tonight. They had an excellent week. They had a rough game against Ottawa. My grading of them will be harsh in the next game if they come out and if they lay an egg in their next game out. I would likely drop them below Winnipeg and Minnesota depending on what they've done. If Winnipeg wins tomorrow, I'm likely to put them at second ahead of Tampa, at least until Tampa's next game. That's where it gets tricky though, is at the top, because Tampa really has earned themselves that spot. They've earned themselves a bad game because they've been that good, and they were leading 4-2 going to the third, and then Ottawa ran them down. So I gave all those points to Ottawa, and I'm hesitant to drop Tampa down, which means Nashville's still number 1. At one point this week, I had Nashville at second, I had Tampa in first, and then that changed. So week to week, you're going to watch this and go, well, geez, he hasn't moved them. I did. I dropped Nashville down to second, and I put Tampa up in first, and then they've switched back since then. So you guys just didn't get to see it. It's those daily rankings again. Darn them. So there you go. The power rankings for the week. Let's go ahead and do this. Then there. Put them there. Yeah, that works. That's fantastic. And then oh, pretty. Okay, so as you can see here, Arizona's in third. Fantastic week for them. Vegas, when you have gold on your jersey, I can't have you as low as they've been, so they got a bonus from that. And for Florida, Luongo really, truly is as good as every single Stanley Cup ring he has to his name. The Islanders lost all 3 games this week, but they look darn good. Love the third jerseys. And for Ottawa, it's important to keep the Ontario teams together, is really what's important. Detroit, honestly, I know their record isn't very good, but I'm telling you, Nielsen's due for like a double hat trick. I think it's coming in the next game. Front Nielsen, 6 goals in the next game. It's going to happen. And Tampa's making everybody look bad, so I have to make them look bad. And the Canucks, well, we know they're going to end up down here anyways, so whatever. And then Nashville, because they're in the standings at about the same spot as Tampa, I had to drop Nashville down to 26th as well. There you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just tapped upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.